If you saw this video on how some Wrangler JLs and Gladiator JTs have a windshield defrost issue, then you'll be interested in this video as I give you an update. Stick around so you can see how the windshield defrost on some Wrangler JLs and Gladiator JTs blow. As I mentioned in the prior video, I went through a bit of an explanation to show you how some Wrangler JL and Gladiator JT owners face a windshield defrost issue. In that video, I made reference to many forum threads where other Wrangler JL and Gladiator JT owners have been sharing their windshield defrost issue experiences. And in that video, I shared with you a hack that I came up with, which I installed before I even started making Cheaper Jeeper TV. So in this video, I have removed that, and I'm going to show you how the current defrost system works. Then I'm going to show you the different hacks that I use and the theory behind how I'm trying to improve the windshield defrost pattern, and maybe it'll help you. And if you have a Wrangler JL that doesn't have this issue, that's great, good for you. But you should make sure you share that with some people who are maybe considering buying one, because when they go to a lot or if they're buying a used one off of somebody, they can test it out. Because if you have one of those inflicted with the issue, when you have the windshield defrost on high, you could feel the wind coming up through the center of the dash and you won't feel it coming out of the edges. Those of you who don't have the issue, you feel the stream of air coming across the whole front of the dash, which is awesome for you. So let's now have a look at the issue and some hacks that I came up with. So you can see here, this is the defrost pattern of the Jeep Wrangler that I have, and it certainly shows the problem where the defrosting is happening just in the center of the dash. Most of the wind is just blowing up through those central vents for whatever reason, whether when they installed the dash unit that something got pinched or dislodged, I'm not sure. But as I mentioned in my other video, there is somebody in the threads that explained how his Jeep had that issue, but while it was in getting some warranty work where the dash was apart, they fixed it. So that leads me to believe that there is something that got dislodged or pinched during installation on some of our Jeeps. Nonetheless, if we have one, what are we going to do? So if you can get your dealer to fix it under warranty, that's great. For those of us who are out of warranty, well, there are some hacks. Now you can see here's the bar that I put in initially, and the idea was I would put a bar to restrict the flow in the center, put some holes in it, hoping it'll let some up through the middle and then direct some to the sides, which was a good idea. But as you can see here in this image, there's quite a bit of air that still came up past the bar in the center, but the bar did send a lot of the hot air out to the sides, which is good, because a problem with some of these windshields when you're driving on the highway and there's lots of ice and snow being splashed up onto the windshield is that the defrost doesn't get to the sides and it tends to build up. So I was happy with my hack in that regard, but as you can see here, it took too long to get to defrost in front of the passenger and the driver's faces. So one of the most important parts that I wanted to make sure was defrosted was not done till later. It did eventually defrost there, but I was not happy with the pattern because it just took too long to get to that important part. So in this update video, I managed to remove that and try a couple other solutions. You can see here, this little gadget is a 3D printed piece of plastic that fits over the central part of the dash. You can see there's 4 squares in the middle that are blocked, and then there's an open square, and then there's another square blocked on either side, and then the 2 remaining open squares have little louvers in there that are intended to direct the air outwards or sidewards from the center. So with this installed, we can have a look at the pattern that it creates when it's used, and you can see where the blocked squares are because the defrosting hasn't occurred there yet, and where the open squares are, you can see that the air is directed in those, and it is beginning to have a nicer dispersal pattern where it's going more evenly across the windshield rather than just up the center like you see for those who have the problematic windshield defrost pattern. So this is not bad. I know people who have this, and if you wanted something like this, I'll put a link to the website that has the file that you need to have it 3D printed. Now, if you don't have a 3D printer, there are libraries that offer 3D printing, there are services that offer 3D printing, or in my case, a member of my club offered this to me and printed it and just gave it to me. So you could check in your club to see if there's anybody with a 3D printer or who's doing something like this. For now, I know there are people who have that and they're satisfied now with the improved dispersal of the defrosting of their Jeep. So that's a hack or solution that you might be happy with. Another one that I wanted to try out, because when I looked at this 3D unit, I kind of thought maybe a couple extra closed squares in the middle and maybe some spreading out towards the sides would give an even better pattern. But I didn't have access to a 3D printer and I wanted to get started with this. So I went onto Amazon and I ordered these 5/8 inch square tube plugs. These are the kind of plastic plugs that you put the bottom of table legs that are 5/8 inch. And I tried to go to my nearest box store, but they had 1/2 inch squares and I had a hard time finding 5/8 inch squares. I learned on the forums that the 5/8 inch squares are the ones that fit. So I ended up going and getting these off of Amazon, and I'll put a link to these so you can see as well for yourself. And in the tips segment, I'm going to talk to you about a way you can save some money if you're going to do this route. But let's have a look and see how this system works. So as you can see here, I put a pattern of squares and plugged the holes, and what I did was I added a couple extra closed squares in the center as well as to the sides that are a little bit more than we saw with the 3D printed technique. So with the plugs in place, I waited for a morning where there was frost on the windshield, fired up the Jeep, and had a look at the pattern that it created. And as you can see here, very similar to the 3D printed item, there's the distribution of the heating and defrosting on the windshield, similar to the 3D item, but a little bit more spread out. And for me, this was a little bit more satisfactory. I could play with this a little more, but it's still an improvement over the initial issue. So that's it for the hacks. I hope that you found this interesting and helpful, but let's move on to our tips segment, because I'm going to show you, if you're interested in doing this, how you can save a little bit of money. Now for some cheaper Jeeper tips. Now with that defrost pattern, I'm pretty satisfied with it. I could go and play around with plugs and patterns all day, but I think I'm going to stick with that. Let's have a look and see what the pattern is and how many plugs it takes so we know how many to purchase. So the 3D printed item had closed up the 4 middle plugs in the dash. And although I was happy with that, I wanted to plug up the middle a little bit more to help spread the defrosting pattern towards the sides. So I added an extra plugged square on either side. So now what I have are 6 closed holes in the center of the dash. So with that, I'm going to skip 2 holes and then put 2 more closed plugs towards the side, which I'm hoping will direct heat going this way and then the rest that way. Now you can play around with this all you want. You can move these 2 over here, move these 2 over one hole as well, or add extra squares. But using 10 squares gave me a dispersal pattern of the defrosting on the windshield that I was satisfied with. So knowing that 10 will do it helps when it comes time to go and make your purchase, because on Amazon you'll find that they're sold in packages of 8, packages of 10, packages of 30, packages of 50. And if you have other members in your Jeep club that want to get in on it, you can get a package of 50 or 30 and divide up the cost among the members in your club. So knowing how many plugs you need, and if you're going to go in on it with some members of your club, you can split the cost and save a little bit of money. So I hope that you found that helpful. And now let's hear from our subscribers.
And now for subscribers' tips. This week's subscriber tip comes from last week's key fob video. Hey Cheaper Jeeper TV, AJT Design has a video on YouTube for custom key fobs for Jeeps. Signed, Ronnie. Hey Ronnie, I checked it out. What a great video, and they certainly have some great designs for other items for Jeeps as well. I'll put a link in the description, and thank you very much. And if you have a tip that you'd like to share, please feel free to share it in the comments section below, as it may make it in a subsequent video. Thank you very much.
Hey, that's it for this week's episode of Cheaper Jeeper TV. I hope that you found it interesting, and if you did, how about giving this video a thumbs up? And if you haven't yet already, please feel free to hit that subscribe button and hit the alert bell so you'll be notified when the next video is released. Until then, I'm Dino for Cheaper Jeeper TV. Be well, stay safe, take care.